Hello, everybody. Welcome to CoinFund Q&A. Today we have the district0x team here, Joey and Madness. Very excited for you guys to tell us about what you've been working on. But first, why don't we kind of introduce you guys to the audience and let us know how you came into blockchain and what brought you to this project.
Cool. Yeah. So hey, I'm Joe. So I actually started off out of high school playing poker. Did that for about 7 years. If you're familiar with the online poker scene in the US, you may remember essentially getting shut down in the US about 5 years ago or so. If you had money online, it got seized basically by the FBI. You got it back eventually, but if you had money on full tilt poker, it took about 3 years to get that money back.
Oh, wow.
So that whole experience kind of turned me off to the idea of other people controlling my money. Then I came across Bitcoin one day when some of my poker buddies had showed it to me. Looked really interesting. Kind of still followed it. The price action at the time was honestly what intrigued me the most. So shortly after leaving poker, I went to go work at a hedge fund for a bit. I think it had, I forget if it was this run up to like $90 or $200. One of those runs up initially though, where it was like looked like a bubble. But it was looked really interesting technology. So I started to read into it more, kind of went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole like so many people do. Decided I want to work for Coinbase. I saw Olaf made a post on Reddit with a bunch of questions to apply. I did that and spent about 3 years at Coinbase as an operations manager. Left there in October to start a recruiting firm focusing on Ethereum projects called Sorcerers. Was also helping Olaf out some on the side over at Polychain. Came across ETHLance, and just it like struck me as, wow, this is actually a dApp that's on the mainnet. It works as it's intended to. At the time was pretty rare. I guess even still it's somewhat rare. But yeah, I reached out to Mattis right away. We sort of hit it off, bounced back and forth some ideas for a few weeks and decided to partner up. And for the last few months now, we've been working on district0x.
Nice. So just like, I don't want to distract from the introductory flow, but I have to ask, like, so when you were watching Bitcoin at 200 and you were kind of feeling like, hey, this is kind of crazy, this might be a bubble, what did you do?
Well, I was working at a hedge fund at the time, so we saw it as a bubble and said, hey, well, bubbles are where the most outsized returns are. So we were trying to get involved to trade it. I think at the time, Mt. Gox was the option to get money onto, and we weren't able to verify our documents before it already started to tank again at that point. Okay. So yeah, we never got involved in the trade, but I started to read more about the technology and got an appreciation for what it actually was outside of the price movement. So yeah, that's how I started to take interest.
Nice. What about you, Mattis? Where do you come from?
Okay, so I come from Slovakia actually, but yeah, I got into software development in high school maybe, and yeah, I started off my career as a software developer pretty much right after high school. Didn't go to university, so most of those years I worked as a freelancer, and yeah, like many years forward, I kind of like yeah, so Ethereum actually a few days before DAO hack, so it kind of confused me, but I still wanted to develop on the blockchain, still find it interesting. So yeah, at first I did some practice app like Glossary or something like that, and then I felt like as a freelancer I would like to earn money in Ether because yeah, I saw some good appreciation there. But yeah, there wasn't many options at the time. So yeah, and I was used to work on Upwork, which is like the biggest freelance platform, and they around that time they also like increased fees to 20%. So I was like, okay, so maybe I can try to build this on blockchain and like do it completely without fees, since you don't rent servers and stuff like that, you can pretty much go very low on fees. So yeah, after a few months, I worked on it in my free time, and yeah, I actually managed to complete it and released it on mainnet, which was kind of surprising that it really actually worked. I mean, I was surprised by that, because all these underlying technology is pretty complex, and when you see some products, it's working reliably on that. So it's kind of amazing. And yeah, that's how I met Joe. He was pretty much one of first users, and yeah, most excited one. And so we stayed in touch, and yeah, we kind of we were in touch pretty much every day since then, and we came up with new ideas, idea of district0x, and yeah, now we're here.
Awesome. Yeah, and for people who might not be familiar with ETHLance, do you guys want to quickly just let us know what that is? It's one of the more functional, I would say, smart contract-based apps out there today.
Yeah, so
yeah.
ETHLance, go for it, Mattis, since you built it.
Okay. Yeah, so ETHLance works very similar as Upwork, which is the biggest freelance platform. It's basically there are freelancers and employers, and freelancers apply for a job, then you get hired, and you issue invoices, which is like a request for payment. And yeah, the thing is, it's all on the blockchain. And we actually have no fees at the moment. We don't take any fees from transactions between employers and freelancers.
Yeah,
which is like the biggest step up from current traditional platforms.
Right on. So would you say that the biggest, so in summary, ETHLance is a kind of maybe Craigslist for jobs, right, in blockchain?
ETHLance is basically just an Upwork built on Ethereum.
So Upwork is
it's a job board for freelancers.
It's a job board. Okay, so and then what is the main sort of like value proposition for ETHLance being on a smart contract platform? Because of course, remember, every time you have to go, make a post or respond to a post or maybe make a transaction with, in that market, you have to pay some fees. So what are customers paying for in ETHLance?
Yeah, the thing is that since they pay on those fees, we don't have to charge them another fees, so they kind of like pay directly for running the platform, which isn't putting us, otherwise we would be some kind of black box where users don't really see how those money they pay on fees are managed to, but this way they see directly how they go into infrastructure which runs the platform.
Yeah. So in other words, it's a way of, by doing it on a smart contract platform, you're kind of making the fee structure really transparent. In actual Upwork, right, you use the platform, Upwork has some kind of transaction fee, you have no idea like if it's fair, what is the multiple and the actual cost that Upwork is paying, with that fee, how much revenue they're making, etc. Here it's like every transaction happens on the blockchain, it's auditable, exactly how much it costs, and you can see that it's going not to a middleman, right, but it's going to, literally the Ethereum network to operate the app, and that's pretty cool. And the other, I think, value prop, tell me how you guys look at this, is like it's really easy to transact with particular workers, right?
That's a value prop. Another thing that I view as a value proposition too is the fact that, well, reputation is essentially attached to your address. So it's a completely auditable and verifiable way of seeing who's worked with whom, what feedback they received, and their overall rating. And you can't really fake it.
Nice. So now let's.
You have these, worldwide payments, which are still pretty cheap, because on Upwork they first charge you service fees, and then when you want to actually send yourself money, you are charged for another fees. I think it's like 2.5% for money transaction actually, which is which you don't have in Ethereum.
Mm-hmm. So awesome. So my understanding is that you guys kind of work together on ETHLance, and then that was sort of the inspiration for district0x. Can you tell us a little bit about how that went?
Yeah, so in ePlans, well, if you use the platform, you realize pretty quickly that the core functionalities it provides are really the ability to post listings, the ability to search and filter through listings, the ability to rank and give reputation to other users on the platform, and the ability to do payments or invoicing, which is essentially like the core functionality that operates an Airbnb or an Uber or an eBay. So yeah, we spent some time thinking about how to abstract this functionality out across a bunch of different marketplaces. And I mean, so really the framework that powers ePlans is 14 smart contracts that make up the back end. The front end files are distributed on IPFS. But the back end, really, though, there's lots of similarities that can be repurposed for any of these marketplaces. So the framework that we're working on, called district0x infra, it's really just the more generalized version of that. ePlans will be moved over to that. But yeah, that will allow the operation of these sort of communal marketplaces, which are, like I said, similar to an eBay or an Uber or something of that nature, or even like a Reddit with payments, kind of one way we see it.
Yeah, awesome. So let's pause there for a second. You know, like, to me, there are certain things that blockchain is just like really, really good for, and other things where people are kind of fudging it a little bit. So marketplaces, I think, are kind of prime use cases for blockchain, and this is because what blockchains do really well is that they disintermediate middlemen, just kind of like how we discussed with ETH-lands. You know, those transaction fees kind of get broken down and, you know, minimized as much as they can be, and the middleman is removed. So marketplaces are like a very natural way of increasing the efficiency of the transaction platform when moving them onto blockchain. And then the trick is getting both sides of the market to come together and to transact. And so when you build an ETH-lands, you know, a job board, essentially, you're going after one market. And then what you're doing with district0x is that you're generalizing to really like many different kinds of markets. So can you guys talk a little bit about like what kinds of markets would this be appropriate for?
Yeah, so, well, initially, I mean, one thing that we're very, very aware of is, well, I mean, I think I read a stat a couple of days ago that less than 0.1% of people in the world still own any cryptocurrency at this point. So we're very, very much aware of the fact that we're in the early days and we're not going to outpace the growth of Ethereum or cryptocurrency itself. So the initial markets that we're focusing on are ones that we think will resonate with the Ethereum community specifically. So after ePlans, which should resonate with the Ethereum community as like a niche job board for Ethereum type projects. The second market we're working on is called Name Bazaar. It's actually an Ethereum names exchange for names registered on the Ethereum name service, which will also include subdomains, which we think is kind of cool. So say like I registered joe.statusim.eth. If that platform takes off and becomes that, maybe that username is valuable one day, I could go ahead and sell that on Name Bazaar. We think with applications like gaming projects or even something like Decentralized, that might be kind of useful down the road. And third market we're building is called Meme Factory. Actually going to be kind of like a hybrid of a Rare Pepe wallet and the subreddit our meme economy, but in the sense that users will be able to go and essentially create a post, but they're really uploading and tokenizing a meme, and other people can come in and they can upvote it essentially. And what they're upvoting, though, they're really minting one more token. So you could think of the raking as almost being the amount of tokens in existence at any given time. So there's like an exponential pricing curve based on, well, the whole model is based on Simon de la Riviere's curation markets model. And that has a neat function for allowing people to, well, if you post some early content and it gets a good traction, you can make some money off it by essentially burning your tokens at the end and cashing out your deposit from the pool that was used to mint these tokens. So that's the, we think, we've seen stuff like that get traction within the cryptocurrency space already. So we think something like that will get traction on Ethereum specifically. And then after that, we're actually going to let the community decide what they would like us to vote. So, or decide what they would like us to build. So as soon as tokens are distributed, we have a Carbon Vote implementation already built. and we have like a formal process for the community to submit district proposals. I think we're up to almost 40 right now. But yeah, like the top ones that get submitted to our GitHub, we will go ahead and add to the Carbon Vote implementation, and then people will be able to use their tokens to signal which ones they would actually like us to deploy next.
If users want to go and submit such a proposal, like they want to suggest a marketplace to build, where do they go for that?
So actually, you go to our GitHub, and one of our pinned repositories is district proposals. And right in there, the README gives the process for submitting a proposal and the rewards that you can earn for doing so. And yeah, you can view everyone else's proposal that they've submitted. It looks like we're up to 38 now. So
that's great. Can't wait to read those. So when let's get a little bit like slightly technical here. So if you are, so it sounds like you're creating marketplaces for various kinds of digital assets, right? So you mentioned DNS domains, you mentioned memes, you mentioned Decentraland assets potentially. So for anybody who doesn't know, Decentraland is a project that is a VR world integrated into blockchain. So you'll be able to buy like plots of land within the VR world and develop them, and maybe eventually monetize them. And of course, you know, just like Second Life or other what's known as metaverses, these universes tend to have kind of a bunch of like three-dimensional virtual objects. In fact, Second Life built quite an economy on such objects, where they have, if I'm not mistaken, about a million regular users who transact about something like $600 million a year, and in these assets. And what you're proposing is yet another marketplace within your framework for those kinds of objects. So now, like, if you zero in on ENS, right? So ENS, Ethereum Naming Service, is a bunch of smart contracts that live on Ethereum. And what you would need to do if you were to facilitate a marketplace between people who are trading these things is the ability to transfer ENS domains, right? Back and forth. So does that mean that when you build out the district for that kind of digital asset, does that mean you have to like very explicitly integrate with ENS?
Yeah, this is actually a pretty good question. Yeah, because the easiest target for us are those digital assets on blockchain, which ownership is on blockchain, and can be transferred on blockchain. So this is best target for us, because actually now when I'm working on Name Bazaar, we will have two types of offerings you can make. You can offer for a fixed price, which users can buy instantly, or you can set up auction. And yeah, as I was doing it, I realized, it's like completely general purpose from Solidity perspective, except this one line or few lines when you actually transfer the ENS domain to new owner. So if you this can be very easily abstracted away. Instead of this one line, it can be pretty much any digital asset on blockchain. So you can, you can be so you already have all the code that you need for, any kind of marketplace for any kind of other digital asset, and it will work pretty much the same.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, given that every district that's looking at a new kind of digital asset, they have to specialize for that asset, right? Those couple of lines of code you got to customize. I guess my question is like, who is responsible for that development? Is it you guys, or is it like can third-party developers come in and do that and deploy it to the network as well?
Yeah, I mean, but not sure if you're asking, like, if we want to do this for ENS, we don't have to ask any permission from ENS team or anything, No,
I guess I'm asking like whether a third-party developer would have to ask permission from you guys in order to deploy a new district for a new kind of digital asset.
Oh, not really from us. Yeah, of course not. Because they can use our smart contracts, and and they can kind of plug in their own function from transferring the ownership of this digital asset. But yeah, you know, this is not like we own it, because the code will be on the blockchain, and those are kind of like separate contracts every time. So yeah, of course they don't have to ask permission from us or anything.
Okay, cool. So this is an interesting topic to explore, right? So the general question here is like, what is the relationship between different districts? And by analogy, right? Like you guys are working with the Aragon team, and the Aragon project is a basically like modular DAO framework. Now, what people can do is they can take the code and they can kind of deploy Aragon organizations completely independently, or they can deploy Aragon organizations on the Aragon network, and then they get certain benefits like, you know, a decentralized like arbitration system. You know, everything works on kind of one token of the network and so on. Is this a similar setup, and like what's the relationship between districts in general?
You could think of it almost in one way. So, well, to backtrack a little bit now to the last question, the framework, as soon as that's actually live and deployed, of course, anyone, like Mattis said, could repurpose that. The actual districts that we build in-house that get voted on via the community, those would be like the first 5 after meme factory is deployed. After that point, though, we hope to have a creation interface where anyone can basically launch one of these within a few minutes, almost like Shopify or something like that for marketplaces. So in that sense, like the plug and play aspect of these couple lines of code, there would be an interface where that's all pretty easy to handle. But before that time, a ClojureScript developer could use the framework and do it themselves. In terms of the relationship, though, so in that sense, if you want to view it like Aragon Core, how anyone can kind of use that, and then with a district, if anyone wanted to deploy it on the district network, well, that would give you the functionality of being able to use this district network token and allow people to actually participate in the governance and decision-making processes for these districts. So if you wanted to build the market and control it yourself, you could do so that way, just using the framework. If you wanted to actually open participation up for others, then you'd want to have it on the network.
Awesome. And I know that obviously this project has a native token. Can you guys talk a little bit about what the token does? Yeah.
So, well, like I said, we're really trying to, the type of markets that we think we can facilitate down the road are something like an Airbnb or an Uber or a Reddit with payments. And like while these platforms have all done a good job of harnessing the power of decentralization or network effects and to offer this better user experience at lower costs we've had in the past, like the governance processes are still completely centralized. We don't really have much say in the evolution of the platform. And we certainly don't have any like participation in the financial successes of them. So really like what we're trying to allow for with this token is to allow like a mechanism for open participation, allow people to actually get a say in the governance processes. And via the governance processes, well, they can decide how they want to monetize these districts and how they want to essentially utilize any revenue that they generate. So yeah, the token is a staking token, which anytime a district is created on a network, a corresponding Aragon entity will be created where all of the marketplace's governance decisions will actually occur. And to facilitate access to these governance processes, the district0x network token has to be used to stake to one of these districts. We'll have an interface for doing that. That will in turn behind the scenes mint voting shares in this Aragon entity and assign those voting shares to whoever staked these tokens. So those voting shares would stay assigned to you as long as you had your token staked there. You'd be able to participate in the governance processes there. If you wanted to leave, you could unstake them and your voting shares would essentially be retired. So that's kind of the use of the token, is to facilitate access to these voting shares and allow you to stake and participate in the district of your choice.
And you know, digging into the governance a little bit more, you know, what kind of governance decisions might be at stake here?
Well, Aragon's really going to give pretty free reign of what you're allowed to propose and vote on. But so we think like we're going to have like a suggested set of bylaws that we apply to districts when they're created. But people will essentially be able to go in and, of course, alter those as they see fit. But they can propose and vote on anything from branding decisions to code of conduct to what third-party auxiliary modules they may want to add. So when I say auxiliary modules, we view those as ways to extend the functionality beyond the additional or beyond the original framework, almost like Melonport's doing, where they have modular plugins. So take, for example, eFlance, something that we might be able to use to extend the utility of that and allow for monetization there is like an AdSense type plugin where people can actually go and vote on the premium placement or the top 3 listings in like a daily auction type bid. And that just gets plugged into the interface, and that allows the district to actually monetize themselves. So people will be able to vote on which modules they want to apply in that sense, be able to set the fees that they want the district to retain, and then be able to decide on how they want to split or utilize that revenue.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So, so I find it really interesting. There's this group of projects like you guys and Aragon and Decentraland, a few others that are kind of working together, almost in a collaboration. And part of it is because what many of these projects are building is infrastructure, right? So Aragon is kind of a governance or organizational smart contract infrastructure. You guys are slightly on a higher level of abstraction. You're like marketplace infrastructure. And there might be others, and so forth. And I guess my question and it's awesome, first of all, to see that that these kind of infrastructural projects are collaborating, because I think that's great. It builds like a network effect. It creates real use cases for things that would otherwise require like more effort. But I'm curious, like your guys' take on like what is the advantage? What are the advantages and disadvantages of sort of, if you will, outsourcing that low-level infrastructure to a different project?
Well, I think the advantages are pretty clear. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that we don't have to build ourselves, being the key advantage. So for a while, we thought about, we had eFlance. We knew that we wanted to utilize this platform type model and allow people to participate in these districts, but we didn't really know. Well, the key part that was missing was the actual governance process in itself. So then when Aragon came along, it was kind of like the missing piece of the puzzle. Really the relationship as we view it there, kind of as you said, infrastructurally, well, if you want to think about it almost as the back end and the front end, Aragon can be seen as like the back end for these DAOs that we're building, whereas district0x is almost the front end in the sense that it's providing the interface. And then other people can attach plugins on top of that, if you will. But yeah, so in terms of the benefits, really stuff, I mean, so many other projects building great stuff. Why build it ourselves when they're already doing it? And yeah, so many opportunities for collaboration. I think like one of the real reasons to build on Ethereum in general is the interoperability afforded by it. So yeah, I think that's
the main reason why those synergies are becoming is because all data and logic, backend logic, is sitting in the same database, which is Ethereum. So for those apps, it's really easy to interact with each other. If you have some other app you want to interact with, you don't really have to ask them about their API or like how to communicate with their servers, which is like a usual case in traditional world, which is kind of messy because everybody is doing it their own way, using their own kind of REST API. It's messy when you have to collaborate with many people. And yeah, if you have it on blockchain, you can just take a look at their Solidity code, and the code will be there tomorrow, will be there 1 week later, 1 year later. No one's gonna shut down that service. So yeah, this is why I think those synergies are really easy to build on Ethereum.
Mm-hmm. But what about the disadvantages? So like, for example, there might be other teams or projects working on similar smart contracting systems for governance. What if someone comes up with something better? Does that mean that you guys will have a harder time, for example, switching to a different solution because you're so integrated with one particular one?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it definitely can happen, but yeah, we all try to keep like some backdoor open just in case this happens. Like, always try to think like in more abstract ways so we don't get too attached to some specific project. But yeah, if you want to have some, some real benefits, sometimes you have to attach to some service or some project, at least to some extent, so you can benefit from that. But yeah, so we will definitely need to find some kind of right balance between, just thinking just in case some project doesn't work out, it won't destroy us completely or something.
Right. And often, even in like open source, like traditional open source development scenarios, right? Like you pick an open source library, oops, you realize there's like a feature that you really, really need, but it's not there. You're forced to maybe like, or a bug, right? And you're forced to sort of like clone and fix it yourself, and you create these kind of like forks of these projects. Like, it could be sort of like challenging to keep track of. When you guys say that a district0x marketplace engenders an Aragon organization, does that organization, is that a sort of custom deployed organization on your back end, or is that an organization that goes into the Aragon network? And I guess the reason why I'm asking is that the difference between that is that the Aragon network benefits economically from your integrations in the second version, in the second option.
Yeah, the intent is to deploy to the Aragon network.
Cool. Yep. Very cool. So
I think the upgradability and features inherent in the Aragon network are the reason for doing so.
Yeah, and also the arbitration is gonna come into play that people will be able to. So I think that's a hugely just governance in general is like such a hugely interesting topic with many people working on it today from very different points of view. And it's something that in blockchain, in maybe like 2013 or something, nobody was talking about it. I think Joel Dietz was maybe like the only one working on Swarm and talking about it. But ever since the DAO hack and the fork and Bitcoin Core and everything else, I think everyone very clearly sees how important it is to be able to govern what are essentially open source projects in the space, and ones that are really, really impactful when you're dealing with blockchains of value. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about how you guys are, how you guys sort of see the team evolving and how you are funding this whole project.
Yeah, so we actually just hired one of my former colleagues from Coinbase, Alexander. I just hired him on as our project manager. Really excited to have him on board. The next couple of weeks, we're actively looking for ClojureScript developers at the moment. So if you are a ClojureScript developer, go ahead and apply on eplants.com. We'd love to talk to you. And then, yeah, we see the team naturally growing out into some more operational and development positions down over the next few months. In terms of
how big the team growing?
So, well, we don't want to rush things. So in terms of development side of things, Mattis, correct me if I'm wrong, we're probably looking for 2 to 3 more developers within the next 4 to 5 months, I would say. And then on the operations side, we'll maybe add 1 to 2 more people.
Yeah, we don't want to hire like too many developers at once because that usually leads to catastrophe. If yeah, when there is like too many developers and one problem, it's a mess, which I know from my previous experience. Yeah, so we rather build like a small but superstar team rather than having army of developers.
Mm-hmm. How do you ensure, how do you get a team which is a superstar team? What do you look for?
Well, I kind of rely on my senses, you know, since I kind of am also experienced developer, so I can kind of see, I can recognize other experienced developers pretty quickly, I think, when I look at their previous work. So yeah, it will be like mainly me choosing a new guys from a developer team.
Mm-hmm. Joey, have you had like experience kind of hiring or interviewing?
Yeah, so well, with Sorcerers, actually, once I left Coinbase, I decided I wanted to get into recruitment side of things. Worked with quite a few projects on that before ETH-Lance, although we started shifting our focus more over to the tokenization and crowd sale modeling side of things, admittedly. But yeah, have quite a bit of experience in terms of sourcing for projects.
Cool. And so now moving on to the financing side of this. So the first question is, how did you guys, you know, and I, by the way, I asked this of most of the early stage blockchain projects here, because we're interested to know how projects have been getting to, first of all, kickoff, and then second of all, get to ICO or token sale, and kind of how do you see the financing roadmap from the beginning to end?
Yeah, so I would say starting off and up until really a month and a half ago or so, when we started to think about the crowd sale process more. It was entirely self-funded and very cheaply too, probably less than $10,000 or so. I mean, obviously that's not including sweat equity, but or hours, but it's just in terms of actual costs. Yeah, I mean, everything's on a blockchain. No, like, well, we do have an AWS instance, but in terms of servers or anything like that, costs are relatively low. So yeah, pretty lean operation in that sense. The last few months, you being a service provider in the space are certainly aware that costs around crowd sales have certainly increased. So audits were a little pricey, legal setup, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, we've been funded for the last month or so thanks to a generous contribution from Jake, you. So yeah, so
From CoinFund, to be more precise, but yes,
to be more specific. So yeah, now we're looking to do our contribution period on Tuesday next week, so July 18th, and we have, well, we're looking minimum funding goal of $2 million. Soft cap at $10 million, and then security caps at the soft cap runs higher than we were expecting it to. It would get cut off at $50 million, and the sale would end immediately.
Mm-hmm. One thing that you guys did interestingly in your you know, token supply allocation is you actually made provisions for future rounds.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what's driving that and how you got, you know, how you structured that for your project?
Yeah, so I've always just kind of viewed it as a mistake to sell all your tokens at one time. Main reason just because, well, in the startup environment especially, like, there's, how often do you start up working on the same thing or with the actual funding goals that you set off and be able to finish the project with that? So there's an inherent need for flexibility, which we wanted to give ourselves. So that's sort of how we were thinking about things. So we thought of, we wanted to give ourselves the ability to do potentially two more funding rounds after the first, although certainly wouldn't do those if not needed. So we have like a community multi-sig in place that will actually have people sign off on whether or not we need to do the second and third rounds based on roadmap milestones that we laid out that need to be completed. At least 18 months would have to have passed from the previous round, and then we'll have all of our wallets and everything published at transparency.district0x.io, so our finances will be very easy to track. So yeah, we'll also be able to tell if we actually need more funding or not.
Awesome. One interesting thing to note there was that in thinking about those future rounds is like this interesting thing that happens, because if you kind of allocate those rounds ahead of time in a constant allocation, then you're sort of taking on a little bit of risk that, like, if if your asset does really well on the secondary market and the price goes up and your valuation goes up, and then you're like, okay, I want to do maybe like another round, your allocation might be like really large, and so you have like this onus to sell, you know, maybe like a really big supply and big number, and that maybe that number is even so big that it's kind of like unrealistic to have a second round of that size. So that's like something to watch out for, you know, for anyone who's kind of thinking about baking in rounds into an initial supply allocation. I think there's like a bunch of ways of doing it, either sort of like estimating what your growth would be, or making that a discretionary inflation, or maybe burning excess tokens from that round. And I just thought it was like an interesting issue that you guys were, first of all, thinking along those lines, you know, and second of all, having to take growth into consideration as you're doing that planning.
Yeah, definitely. And you helped us sort of think through the way to model that out in the later rounds down the road. As you'll remember, initially we had it selling a bit more tokens in the later rounds and lessen the, well, still the bulk in the first one, but less in the later rounds then.
Right, like the drop off basically percentage wise has to be a little bit steeper.
Yeah.
Taking into account the generally like more exponential type growth of these supplies, at least in the past. Very good. So so you're looking to raise between 2 and 10 is the recap. And I believe your sale is, I think it's less than 4 days from now,
well,
right?
10 is the soft cap. We have the hard cap essentially at 50 million.
Okay, right. But again, so yeah, so the event is happening like within 4 days? Is that
4 days, July 18th at 3 p.m. UTC.
Okay, awesome. Where should people go to read more about your project and really dig in?
Yeah, so district0x.io. You can access our white paper directly from there. You can also access our blog from there. Our blog has the bulk of our content. You can read our introductory post to sort of get an idea of what we're building. Check out some of our recent partnership announcements that we've made. One with Decentralized, one with 0x project that we're really excited about. And then there's also some information about our upcoming fundraiser on there as well. And we'll be posting FAQ today, as well as some videos that we just uploaded to our YouTube to walk you through the contribution process.
Awesome. Do you guys see yourselves as, you know, you've been a very, very active project in terms of doing integrations. Do you see that continuing, or do you feel like you're kind of at a critical mass of integrations already? No,
I mean, we entirely hope to see that continue. Very much would like to keep working with projects in the space that have interesting synergies with us.
Fantastic. So for the last couple of minutes, I just wanted to kind of go a little bit more general. You guys have both been, you know, in the space for a while. Just what do you think about the market in general, and what some interesting things have been going on from your point of view?
In all honesty, I think we both had our head down focusing on this so much for the last month and a half that we haven't had too much chance to pay too much attention to the market. Although my price alerts start going up every now and then. So,
well, the prescient issue kind of in the mainstream press right now is like, you know, Ethereum went from $8 to $400 in the course of 6 months, and then fell to $175. So is this a bubble? You know, I mean, this is like, I'm asking you as a person who was watching Bitcoin at $200. Do you feel like this is normal behavior for crypto? Do you feel like we're in an unsustainable point?
It certainly doesn't feel like anything out of the ordinary to me, having been in the space for like 5 years. Yeah, just the natural ebb and flow of things. There's only large runs followed by somewhat large declines, and things stabilize. And the key thing is that there's always, behind the scenes, regardless of the price, there's always innovation going on. And right now, it seems like, from my point of view, more so than ever in the Ethereum space. So that's what we're really tracking and what we're focused on.
So I noticed there's a trend kind of, well, now that the space is attracting more sort of external people, like newer participants, who are just like learning about blockchain more recently, and they tend to come from the more traditional world. And this is like true for investors, like early stage VCs and family offices now are paying a lot of attention. But also for founders is like more traditional consumer technology companies like Kick are coming into the space, you know, and certainly many others that are about to come in. They tend to be like a little bit more conservative. So they're like, oh, you know, we got to get that token sale out as soon as possible while Ether is $400. But when Ether drops, then they get like really worried, right? That that their sale is not going to perform as well. So do you guys think that, you know, especially in the context of you doing a sale in 4 days, do you guys think Ether price has a very significant impact on how you'll raise?
Well, I mean, I think just naturally, yeah, certainly the short-term fluctuations of things are going to have an impact on people's appetite for any sort of crowd sales coming up. But I think that's just to be expected in terms of. I
guess I'm asking, like, are you?
If there was to be like a DAO hack type event before our sale, yeah, we might be prudent to maybe delay it a couple of weeks or something like that. But yeah, in terms of anything drastic that we think will have a major impact at this point, no, we don't really think so.
Okay, I remember, you know, last summer, I think it was Plutus IT that was raising like literally in the wake of the DAO hack for like 9 days, and you know, that was a very different market back then, where most companies were lucky to raise $1 million.
Yeah,
which they did, but it was just interesting, like the timing they chose. Cool. And in terms of like technology trends, like, do you guys, you know, just when you think about how the space is evolving, are there any particular trends that you're keeping an eye on? I can tell you what I'm keeping an eye on, but I'd like to hear your thoughts too.
Mattis, you want to take that one?
Well, we're looking forward to Metropolis, obviously, which should come up in a few months. And yeah, there should be some features that might be useful in for district0x user experience. Like, for example, contracts would be able to pay gas instead of users. So there might be some use cases. Of course, it has some drawbacks of being abused or something. But yeah, I think we'll try to work with that, you know, for some applications. So yeah, I mean, we'll see in a few months what comes up from Metropolis. Of course, Solidity is being, you know, developed more, and it allows, you know, to writing, better contracts. It's kind of like more bit too technical, but yeah, for me, it will make my life easier much more, you know, when some features will be added to Solidity. So that's what I'm personally looking forward to.
Do you guys think that that Ethereum, well, let me phrase it this way. Do you guys think that new smart contract platforms, and there's a bunch that are kind of being developed right now, examples include Tezos, you know, functional smart contract programming language platforms like Archain, which is what Greg Meredith is working on. The guys that we had on here a few weeks ago, Zen Protocol, is working sort of on a F-star based smart contract language for financial instruments. Do you guys see these like alternative platforms as a threat to Ethereum in any way?
Not necessarily a threat. I mean, I don't really subscribe to the one chain that ruled them all theory as is. I think we're naturally going to see quite a few different chains existing in parallel with projects like Polkadot or Cosmos connecting. I think that, yeah, I think it's not a correct view to think that we're just going to see one chain be the dominant one. I mean, we'll definitely see one be larger than the others. Just there's always going to be one that's the largest. But yeah, I think different use cases will naturally be more applicable to certain types of blockchains.
Got it. So you see a world where sort of different solutions are better specialized for different applications, but we live in a world of kind of blockchain of blockchains. where you can go from one to the other quite easily.
Yeah, I think that's the natural evolution of things.
Awesome, sweet. All right, guys. Well, I think that's about all I had. But is there anything that you'd like to tell the audience about district0x before we go?
Yeah, come join us on Slack. Watch out for scammers since they've been rampant lately. But yeah, come join us on Slack. Check us out. We've got a really active community going right now. Our district proposal process has been getting a lot of interest. So we'd love to hear if you got any ideas for marketplaces that you'd like to see us build. And if you have any questions for us, feel free to ask. We're on Slack pretty much anytime we're not awake or not asleep. Sorry.
Awesome. I'm gonna go check out the GitHub right now and see see if I can come up with some new marketplaces to suggest to you guys. Joe, Mattis, thank you very much for joining us at CoinFund Q&A. And everybody, go to district0x.io if you want more information.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yes, thank you. Have a good night. Thank you.
Cheers.